Well, hello, welcome to this week's campaign catch-up segment. Joining me today, CBN's John Stolnis. John, we are here. We are in the home stretch. We've been doing this for, I think, a couple months now.
Yep.
And it felt sort of far off. You know, we were going through, the arc of what we've been through here. I mean, if we just pause and think about that for a minute, I mean, it was all the lawfare against Trump, and then we had assassination attempts, then we had Biden drop out, and we had Harris jump in. I mean, it's just, there's probably 100 other things in between, but now we're finally here the last couple weeks. And I don't think there's been any major shift in the polls that's like super notable, unless you've seen something you want to chime in on here. But I think maybe a logical place to start is, what do you see happening here in the next 2 weeks to get this, as both candidates are approaching the finish line?
It's a great question, because I think as you look at the polls, and we can kind of go through them, but there really hasn't been a whole lot of change. It just, from week to week, it seems like one of the candidates jumps slightly ahead of the other nationally, and then it reverts back the following week. I think it really is just kind of depending on which group of people you happen to canvass that particular week. The different battleground state polls are all still neck and neck, again, just depending on which one you're looking at. I know the Real Clear Politics rolling average out today has Trump ahead in every battleground state, but I don't think by any more than 2% in any of them, and most of them are 1% or less. So essentially, you've got a tied race in all of these different places if these numbers are to be believed. And of course, that's the caveat, right? If the numbers are to be believed, right. And of course, we all know that there have been issues with presidential polling in the last two presidential elections. But over these next 2 weeks, I mean, we talked about this. I remember, Dan, a couple of months ago, us saying that Trump and Harris or whoever just needed to camp out in the battleground states. Well, That's all they've done, right? They haven't moved from any of the 7 states. I mean, these guys don't even need Apple Maps anymore to get around. Like they just know where to go the second they enter Wisconsin or Michigan or Pennsylvania, and that's what we're seeing this week. Both candidates are going to be in all of the different battleground states. And at this point, I don't think it's so much trying to get any last-minute independents who are undecided, because I just don't know what undecided voters there are out there. There are some, I'm sure, but I don't know that there's enough that you can organize a campaign strategy about trying to get those folks. I think right now it's a base push. Try and get as much of your base excited about you. Try and get as much of your base out there for early voting as possible. I think you're especially seeing that on the Democratic side. Republicans have tried to do that a little bit too much, but Donald Trump on the campaign trail has still said he doesn't really like early voting, doesn't like mail-in voting. And so I think that could be an issue for the Republicans. Yeah. But at the moment, Dan, with 2 weeks to go, it's a toss-up. It really genuinely is a toss-up. I don't think anybody has any feel whatsoever on what's going to happen election night.
Yeah, I mean, it really does feel like, because, and really, honestly, and maybe you can speak to this too, John, that it's really almost insane that there's this many battleground states that are this close.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's the odds of it being that razor thin. It just seems almost astronomical. And I like numbers, but I'm not like an uber, guy that can really dive into all of these numbers. But I think the odds of that happening are so slim. And so I bring that up too, because all right, so you got that. Just the fact that these are so close is crazy, right? Like we could talk about that. But then, you have to get out your base. It makes that so much more important. So that's why we're seeing that from these two candidates. But if there are any undecided voters that they see out there, you are definitely motivated to try to get those too, because it's so close. Like if you find one little group, like I read a report, John, here in Pennsylvania where I live, that Trump was really trying to court the Amish vote, because they had, remember there was the milk debacle there with I think the Biden administration, so the Amish people, I guess, hadn't really registered in great numbers before, but now he was trying to get that push. But that's the sort of thing, like that's, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of vote in a state when it's so razor thin. If you get one of those groups, maybe it will make a difference.
In a state like Pennsylvania, in a state like Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, this election could be decided by hundreds of votes. When you think about how many people live in these states, you could see one or multiple of these races decided by hundreds of votes, certainly thousands of votes. I don't think you're going to see either candidate win any of these battleground states in blowout fashion. I'm just looking at I'll run down these numbers from Real Clear Politics. And again, these are rolling averages of all the different polls that have come out, say, over the last month or so. Trump is up 1.5 or 1.6 in Arizona. He's up 0.8 in Nevada. He's up 0.2 in Wisconsin, 1.2 in Michigan, 0.8 in Pennsylvania, 0.5 in North Carolina, and 1.8 in Georgia. When you factor in the margin of error is usually +2 or 3, those numbers could very easily be all plus Kamala at this point. I mean, we just don't know. It's to your point, these battleground states, all of them could be separated by hundreds or thousands of votes. And there's going to be, I guarantee you, there's going to be one of these states where it's hundreds, where it's going to be like a difference of 500, 600, 700 votes separating the two, where you have to have the mandatory recounts and all of that. You mentioned one of the ways that the Trump campaign is trying to find some independent votes, according to the Amish vote. What we're seeing right now from the Harris campaign is they are really, over these last 2 weeks, I think you're going to see them put front and center some of the Republicans, and not like the Adam Kinzingers of the world, but people like, and I guess Liz Cheney is kind of seen in that same vein. But here on Monday, Liz Cheney is campaigning with Kamala Harris in 2 different stops in Pennsylvania and in Michigan. But you also see people like Trump's former defense secretary, Mark Esper, out there. You see John Bolton out there. You see others who were in his cabinet who have come out, not necessarily said they're voting for Kamala Harris, but said that they're not voting for Donald Trump. She is using those words in ads now in these different battleground states to amplify for Republicans who are like conservatives who were part of the Reagan conservatives who don't like the direction that the MAGA movement has had in the Republican Party. Washington Post had an article about this today. Evan Roth-Smith, who is a lead pollster for Blueprint, which is an organization that is kind of spearheading this, said this is really the first time that he has seen the pure Trump personal attack land. Personal attacks against Donald Trump land because they're coming. The messengers are Republican messengers, and that they're seeing some of that stick. Now, again, whether that's to be believed, it's hard to know without talking to people and seeing the numbers play out. But this is the strategy the Harris campaign is taking over these last couple of weeks. I think you're going to see a lot of ads in Pennsylvania, where you live, Dan. You're going to see a lot of a lot of the Trump cabinet members who were not a fan of his. You're going to see their public statements from the past few years just trumpeted out to everybody over these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I have heard that. And Elon Musk was here in the Philadelphia area here just, I think, over the weekend, as was Trump. And actually, very interesting side note here, just through our church, we had some exchange students staying at various houses here from our church, and we had one from China, and she actually went to the Trump rally. And it was an interesting reason why. She said, I was just so interested to go because in China, we don't get to do that. Yeah. She was just saying that, which I just found fascinating. Of course, communist China, they've got, these dictator leaders in there. Yeah. So she just wanted to go because she was amazed that they were taking questions from the audience and things of that nature. But point is, they were here in this area. And so, it's when you look at the 270 to win map, John, the other thing I was going to add was, they're all within that margin. I think Stu said it here. Stu Bergier said it on this segment a couple weeks ago, talking about how it's an indicator of like general, right? Like what's happening general. Like they can only narrow it down to between 2%. So it could flow either way. So when you look at those swing states, and if you go to 270towin.com, you want to try this yourself, just play around with it and just go with a couple scenarios. Here, if Harris wins like 3 out of those, all of a sudden she's winning by, 20 electoral votes. If Trump wins those, he's going to win by, 50 electoral votes. So, I mean, it could be a blowout either way, electorally, that is. I mean, as far as the total vote goes, it's going to be close. But, it's just super interesting that it could literally end up one of a whole number of ways.
It really could. And I think the other thing that is important to note is that I don't know exactly what the Elon Musk factor is on this campaign. I kind of wanted to ask you this question. He has come out and said that he's giving away $1 million a day to people who sign up on his political action committee, which is a political action committee to, quote, defend the Constitution. But in a sense, it's a PAC to support the Trump campaign and Donald Trump. And I know there are some legal experts are questioning whether or not this is legal, essentially paying people for their vote. And so I know the Trump campaign came out on Monday and essentially said that they really appreciate everything Elon Musk is doing for them. He's been a great surrogate for Donald Trump. But I think there's a little bit of apprehension about the $1 million a day. What do you make of that? Is that a good way, do you think, for Musk and the Trump campaign to try and curry people to sign up on this PAC?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I would have to see. I mean, A, if it's legal or not, like you're saying, or B, then B, if it's actually, I would assume they're getting people interested in that. I would assume just by the numbers, right? But
yeah,
Elon's influence though is interesting here to me in this campaign, John, because obviously, just a humongous name, right? He's just super well known. And in an alternate universe, this is a guy that would be heralded by people on the progressive left just for all the work he's done, with electric cars and fighting. He's big into fighting, climate change and things of that nature. So, I was watching the SpaceX thing the other day. I forget all the names of the different boosters and rockets he's got going, but watching that thing land, I mean, it's just really cool stuff that this guy's doing with his company. And so, in an alternate universe, here's somebody that would be celebrated probably by the left and the right, but of course he's picked a side. We're in divisive times, but just given the status that he has, and I think he's a pretty intelligent guy. So when he makes points and whatnot, it's interesting. I mean, just given what he's done, you got to listen to him. So, but are people able to sort of brush that off and just say, here's another billionaire, because you see that kind of critique come, another billionaire supporting for Trump. I don't know. Like a lot of things in this campaign, I really don't know. I mean, I would think that it's a net big win for Trump to have Elon Musk out there as far as this specific courting tactic of doing the $1 million. I'm not an expert in that area, so I'm not 100% sure on that. But as far as his influence goes, I would have to think this is a net positive having him out there.
I think the interesting question is how many of these voters out here in these swing states are very online, right? For our jobs, we have to be very online. We're on Musk's X platform almost all day because it's a great way for journalists to see information as it comes in real time. Really, it's the best way for us to see information as it comes in real time. But there's also, it's also a breeding ground for a lot of negativity and at times misery. And, there's what he has done with that platform, his goal has been to try and he felt in 2020 that the former Twitter heads were suppressing Democratic
the
and
Biden laptop,
voices.
that whole debacle there. Yeah.
And so he's tried to reverse engineer that, and he's tried to make it so that conservative voices are just as prominently heard. And the critics now are saying he's over amplifying conservative voices at the expense of the liberal voices. And I don't know if that's true, because I don't see all the numbers. My feed is loaded with sports news, so I couldn't really tell you one way or the other. But I think that he's become polarizing because he's gotten political. And I think you're right. I think in a lot of different cases, he probably would be celebrated on the left for some of the work he's done. I think he was previously before all of this came down. So he's a very interesting figure. I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's gonna, just because people sign up for a political action committee for the chance to win $1 million. If you're driving people to sign up for something for greed, for money or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to pull the lever for your candidate on November 5th. But it's an interesting idea. I don't know about I think it's on an ethical gray area, a little bit of ethical quicksand there. But it is interesting, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, we certainly will. And you look at, we talked a lot about the Trump side of things. Now, Harris, she got a little bit of grief, John, for kind of skipping the Al Smith dinner there. Mm-hmm. Where do you see her focusing in on here in the next couple days and weeks? I mean, obviously, battleground states and stuff. But, one of the things I think of, Trump going to McDonald's and doing that was obviously taking a dig at Harris. And he's been like kind of, keeps bringing up this fact that she mentioned she worked at McDonald's, and he's obviously trolling her there. You know, I think in the last couple of weeks here, nothing kind of happens by accident, right? You only have so many things you can do. So whatever they end up doing, and you're watching these candidates and you're seeing them pop up somewhere, you have to ask yourself, okay, what was the decision behind this and why they wanted to do it? So you had Trump at McDonald's, you know, you've got Harris, you know, kind of getting trolled there. What do you see her focusing on here, John, in the last couple of days here, or in the next couple of days, I guess? We've got 2 weeks, so a lot happens here in 2 weeks, but the next couple of days, what do you see?
Yeah, what is the intended audience? I think that's going to be important for each of these candidates here over the last couple of weeks as we go along, because that's going to be the key. Like, who are they trying to reach? We saw her go on Fox News at the end of last week, which I thought was an interesting decision, because I think clearly she is still trying to reach out to some conservative voters, again, like some Reagan type Republicans who don't like MAGA, who might like to see the country go, the Republican Party kind of move back to where it was a little bit, and be free of the Donald Trump influence in the party at the moment. And so, but they still might be reluctant to gravitate towards Kamala Harris because of some of the social issues that she has come out in favor of. I know that's very true on the among Christian evangelicals. You know, there may not be a lot of love for Trump in the way that he comports himself, but there's also nothing really to grab onto with regards to the Harris-Walz campaign because of some of the social issues there. And so I think what she's going to be trying to do over these next couple of weeks is I think she's going to continue to try to reach out to some of them. I think we're seeing her team, and I know our David Brody, he's working on a story about Kamala Harris's faith angle, and we've been getting some positive response in terms of trying to speak to some people in her inner circle about her faith. I think she's trying to reach the evangelicals a little bit, sensing that there may be some folks there that she could possibly peel away in some of these battleground states. And I think we might see that continue. She spoke at a couple of churches on Sunday morning in the Atlanta area. She was on Charlemagne the God last week, talking about her faith as well as other issues that affect the African American community. So, and then she's just going to have these big rallies in these battlegrounds. I think that's going to be her plan the rest of the way. I think there's going to be the occasional reach out to the Republicans who are out there like Liz Cheney, like Mark Esper, some of those folks who, again, just have a real problem with how Donald Trump comported himself on the campaign trail and in his first 4 years in office.
All right. Well, you know, certainly we'll be back here again here in a couple days to recap what has happened in the next couple days, because again, like you said, they're going to be barnstorming here around, and it'll be quite interesting to see where they focus on, who they're focusing on, because like we said, it's so razor thin. I think that's the key thing to kind of keep in mind. Like it's in those battleground states, the ones that are up for grabs, that's going to decide the election. And it's so razor thin that they're just going to try to peel off any small amount that they can, because it will matter. And so let's watch and see where they think they can get it. And I think as we watch where they go here the next couple of days, and the next week or so, that's where they think they're going to get it. So
I want to bring up a secular movie real quick that I imagine many of in our audience have seen. Do you remember the movie Goodfellas? Obviously,
yes.
Do you remember the scene where they're peeling the garlic with a razor blade, razor thin, as they're preparing an Italian meal, because the garlic will just evaporate in the liquid? That's what I feel like these candidates are doing right now. Like they're trying to just carve off little slivers of groups of people, because those little slivers of garlic could be the difference in this election in a couple of weeks.
It's crazy. It really is. And so we are going to watch it closely, and we'll be back here later this week to recap it all. John Stolnis, appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.